calm, soothing narration begins. Imagine a world painted not with the vibrant hues of modern maps, but with the deep blues of vast, uncharted oceans and the swirling currents that whispered secrets between distant lands. A world where the very air hummed with the promise of discovery, and the horizon was not a limit, but an invitation. The Bronze Age, a period often seen through the lens of its metalworking and its towering monuments, was also a time of unprecedented maritime connection. Before written records could fully document the intricate dance of trade and exploration, there existed a vast, interconnected network of sea routes, a secret sea highway that bound together the nascent empires of the ancient world. These were not mere voyages of necessity, but carefully orchestrated expeditions, feats of engineering and navigation that would shape the course of human civilization. To truly understand how this came to be, we must first examine its origins, the very first hesitant dips of oars into the water that would eventually carry the weight of empires. The story of the Bronze Age maritime network is, in essence, the story of human curiosity meeting the boundless potential of the sea. It is a narrative woven from threads of innovation, necessity, and the enduring human drive to connect, to trade, and to understand. Long before the grand fleets of Rome or the daring voyages of the Age of Exploration, communities along the coasts of the Mediterranean, the Aegean, and even the more distant Atlantic shores began to perceive the ocean not as an insurmountable barrier, but as a highway. This gradual awakening was not a sudden, dramatic revelation, but a slow, iterative process, building upon generations of coastal fishing and short-range travel. Early maritime activity was likely limited to observing prevailing winds and currents, the patterns of tides, and the behavior of marine life. These early mariners, perhaps using simple rafts or dugout canoes, would have gradually extended their reach, moving from one familiar headland to the next, always within sight of land, or at least with the comforting knowledge that land was not impossibly far away. The very development of bronze itself played a crucial, albeit indirect, role in fostering this maritime expansion. The creation of bronze, an alloy of copper and tin, required access to both of these metals. Copper was relatively widespread, but tin, in many significant quantities, was not. This scarcity of a vital commodity created a powerful incentive for long-distance trade. Societies rich in copper needed tin, and societies with tin needed copper, along with a host of other goods. This fundamental economic imperative became a driving force behind the expansion of maritime routes. It was not simply a matter of acquiring luxury goods. It was about acquiring the very materials necessary for technological advancement and societal development. Consider the island of Crete, a place that would become a pivotal hub in the Bronze Age maritime world. Even in the early Bronze Age, around 3000 BCE, Minoan sailors were beginning to venture further afield. Their island location, surrounded by the rich waters of the Mediterranean, provided them with both sustenance and an excellent launching point for exploration. They would have observed the land masses that shimmered on the distant horizon, the shores of Anatolia, the Peloponnese, and eventually even North Africa. Their early voyages were likely to exploit local resources, perhaps fishing grounds or deposits of desirable stone, but the seeds of a wider network were being sown. The true burgeoning of Bronze Age maritime trade, however, begins to become more evident around the middle of the 3rd millennium BCE, and then truly flourishes in the 2nd millennium BCE. This period, often associated with the height of Minoan civilization and the rise of Mycenaean Greece, witnessed a significant increase in the scale and sophistication of seafaring. Ships, which had likely been relatively small and open for much of the earlier period, began to grow in size and complexity. While we have no intact Bronze Age ships to study directly, reconstructions and artistic depictions offer valuable clues. We can infer the use of square sails, likely made of linen or perhaps woven reeds, which would have allowed ships to harness the power of the wind more effectively. Oars would have remained essential, providing propulsion and maneuverability, especially in calmer seas or when navigating harbors. The construction of these vessels would have been a considerable undertaking. Timber, sourced from coastal forests, would have been felled, shaped, and assembled. The techniques of joining planks, likely using mortise and tenon joints secured with pegs or rope, and the application of pitch or bitumen for waterproofing would have been honed over time. The ability to build larger, more seaworthy vessels meant that longer voyages were possible, and the carrying capacity for trade goods increased dramatically. This increase in capacity was crucial. It allowed for the transport of bulkier commodities, such as pottery, grain, olive oil, and wine, alongside more specialized items like metals, precious stones, and finished metalwork. The geographical scope of these voyages is truly remarkable for the time. The Eastern Mediterranean became a vibrant crossroads. Minoan Crete, with its advanced civilization and strategic location, established a dominant presence. Their ships, laden with distinctive Kamares-ware pottery, olive oil, and perhaps even textiles, would have sailed to the coasts of mainland Greece, the Cycladic islands, Anatolia, and Egypt. From Egypt, they would have obtained papyrus, linen, and perhaps exotic goods like ivory and ebony. From Anatolia, they would have acquired obsidian, a volcanic glass prized for its sharp edges, and perhaps even worked metals. The Cycladic islands, particularly Melos, were important sources of obsidian, a material that was highly valued throughout the Bronze Age. The movement of obsidian from Melos to Crete, mainland Greece, and even further afield, demonstrates the existence of established trade routes and the demand for specific raw materials. The presence of Cycladic figurines found in Crete and on the mainland also points to cultural exchange and the movement of finished goods. Mainland Greece, though perhaps initially more focused on its own resources, gradually became integrated into this growing maritime network. The rise of Mycenaean civilization in the late Bronze Age, with its fortified palaces and warrior elite, saw them become significant players in Mediterranean trade. Mycenaean pottery, characterized by its distinctive Linear B inscriptions, has been found in abundance across the Aegean, the Eastern Mediterranean, and even as far west as Italy and Sicily. Their exports likely included wine, olive oil, and perhaps timber, while they imported metals, ivory, and luxury items. The Linear B tablets, found at sites like Mycenae, Terens, and Pylos, offer tantalizing glimpses into the economic activities of the Mycenaeans, mentioning goods, commodities, and even naval expeditions, though the inscriptions themselves are primarily administrative and do not provide a narrative account of voyages. The trade routes were not static, however. They evolved and adapted based on the availability of resources, political stability, and the emergence of new powers. The interaction between these various cultures was a complex tapestry of both cooperation and competition. While trade was mutually beneficial, there would have been instances of piracy, territorial disputes, and shifting alliances. However, the overarching trend was one of increasing interdependence, facilitated by the constant flow of goods and ideas across the seas. Beyond the immediate Aegean and Eastern Mediterranean, the Bronze Age maritime network extended further. To the west, evidence suggests voyages reaching Italy and Sicily. The presence of Mycenaean artifacts in these regions, and conversely, the discovery of Italian amber and other materials in Mycenaean contexts, points to established, albeit perhaps less frequent, trade routes. The exploitation of amber, a fossilized tree resin prized for its warmth and luster, originating from the Baltic region, is particularly fascinating. While its direct transport by sea from the Baltic to the Mediterranean in the Bronze Age is a subject of debate among scholars, it is undeniable that amber found its way into the Mediterranean world, likely through a complex series of intermediaries and overland routes that connected with coastal trading points. This suggests a layered network, where goods could be transferred from one mode of transport or one trading culture to another, gradually making their way across vast distances. The concept of secret sea routes might conjure images of clandestine operations, but in the Bronze Age context, it refers more to the unspoken understanding and established practices that governed maritime movement. These were not necessarily secret in the sense of being hidden, but rather, they were the exclusive domain of experienced mariners and trading communities who possessed the knowledge of safe harbors, prevailing winds, currents, and the locations of essential resources. This knowledge was likely passed down through generations, a valuable form of intangible heritage that conferred significant economic and social advantage. Navigating these ancient seas was a remarkable feat of skill and observation. Without magnetic compasses or sophisticated charts, Bronze Age mariners relied on a deep understanding of celestial bodies, the position of the sun and stars, and the patterns of wave motion. They would have observed the flight of birds, which often indicate the proximity of land, and the appearance of coastal landmarks. The ability to read the subtle signs of the sea, changes in water color, the presence of particular marine life, would have been paramount. The prevailing winds of the Mediterranean, the Meltemi in the north and the Sirocco in the south, would have dictated sailing seasons and routes. Mariners would have meticulously planned their voyages to take advantage of favorable winds and to avoid the treacherous storms that could arise. The summer months, with their generally calmer seas and consistent northerly winds, were likely the primary season for long-distance voyages. During the winter, sea travel would have been significantly more dangerous and undertaken only by the most experienced and well-provisioned crews, or for short, essential journeys. The concept of safe harbours was also crucial. These were sheltered bays or natural coves where ships could anchor for the night, seek refuge from storms, or conduct trade. The development of rudimentary port facilities, even if they were simply areas of protected coastline with a means of disembarking goods, would have been vital for sustained maritime activity. Archaeological evidence from sites like Komos in Crete, a significant Bronze Age port, reveals evidence of warehouses, jetties, and the remains of numerous shipwrecks, all testifying to the importance of these coastal hubs. The sheer volume of trade is difficult to quantify precisely, but the widespread distribution of specific types of pottery, metal artifacts, and raw materials provides compelling evidence. The presence of vast quantities of Egyptian grain in Minoan contexts, or the widespread distribution of Mycenaean pottery throughout the eastern Mediterranean and beyond, speaks to organized, large-scale movements of goods. These were not just isolated exchanges, but a sustained flow that underpinned the economies and societies of the Bronze Age world. The impact of this maritime network extended far beyond mere economic exchange. It facilitated the dissemination of ideas, technologies, and cultural practices. Innovations in shipbuilding, navigation, and metallurgy likely spread along these routes. Artistic styles, religious beliefs, and even linguistic influences were exchanged between cultures. The shared artistic motifs found in Minoan frescoes and Mycenaean pottery, for example, suggest a degree of cultural cross-pollination, where artists and artisans were inspired by the creations of their distant trading partners. The discovery of tin, a critical component of bronze, from sources such as Cornwall in Britain and potentially from the Iberian Peninsula, suggests an even wider, though likely more complex and indirect, network reaching into northwestern Europe. While direct Bronze Age sea voyages from Cornwall to the Mediterranean are not definitively proven on a large scale, the presence of Cornish tin in Mediterranean bronze artifacts strongly implies a series of intermediate trades, where tin was transported by sea and then overland, or along coastal routes, until it reached the established Mediterranean trading hubs. This would have involved numerous hands and stages, a testament to the intricate nature of long-distance commerce in the ancient world. The existence of these extensive trade routes also implies a degree of political stability and cooperation, at least for periods. For long-distance voyages to be undertaken with any regularity, the seas needed to be relatively safe from widespread piracy. While piracy was undoubtedly a persistent threat, the successful operation of these networks suggests that the major maritime powers, such as the Minoans and later the Mycenaeans, maintained some level of control or influence over key sea lanes, or that smaller communities along the routes provided safe havens and facilitated trade. The archaeological record, particularly the study of shipwrecks, provides invaluable insights into the nature of Bronze Age maritime trade. The Uluburun shipwreck, discovered off the coast of Turkey, is a prime example. Dating to the late 14th century BCE, this vessel was laden with an extraordinary cargo, including copper ingots, tin ingots, Canaanite jars filled with resin, ebony logs, ivory tusks, ostrich eggs, glass ingots, gold jewelry, and even a rhinoceros horn. The sheer diversity of this cargo, originating from regions as far-flung as Egypt, Cyprus, Canaan, Crete, and potentially even further afield, paints a vivid picture of the interconnectedness of the Bronze Age world. The Uleburen wreck is not just a single find. It is a snapshot of a fully functioning, complex international trading system. The presence of raw materials like copper and tin ingots, alongside finished products like jewelry and glass, indicates that both raw resources and manufactured goods were transported across vast distances. The investigation of shipwrecks like Uleburen allows archaeologists to reconstruct the routes, the types of vessels used, and the economic relationships between different cultures. The careful analysis of the cargo, its origin, and its intended destination provides concrete evidence for the flow of goods and the sophistication of Bronze Age maritime commerce. The preservation of organic materials in shipwrecks, such as cedar wood from Lebanon, also helps to identify the origins of shipbuilding materials, further illuminating the scope of these maritime networks. The technological advancements that underpinned this maritime expansion were not limited to shipbuilding. The development of more sophisticated navigational techniques, even if they were empirical and observational, was essential. The understanding of celestial navigation, the ability to use the sun to maintain a general direction during the day and the stars at night, was a cornerstone of long-distance seafaring. The regularity of these voyages suggests a high degree of confidence in their navigational abilities. Furthermore, the economic structures that supported these voyages were themselves quite advanced. The accumulation of wealth, likely through surplus agricultural production and specialized crafts, provided the capital for shipbuilding and the acquisition of trade goods. The organization of expeditions, involving the recruitment of crews, the provisioning of ships, and the management of trade negotiations, would have required a level of administrative capability. The existence of centralized authorities, such as the palace economies of the Minoans and Mycenaeans, likely played a significant role in organizing and financing these large-scale trading ventures. The Bronze Age maritime network was not a single, unified entity, but rather a complex web of overlapping routes and interconnected communities. Different regions specialized in the production and export of specific goods, creating a dynamic system of exchange. Cyprus, for example, was a major source of copper, a metal vital for bronze production. Its strategic location in the eastern Mediterranean made it a key entrepot for the trade of copper, which was then shipped to other regions for smelting and alloying. The role of the Aegean Islands, particularly the Cyclades, as intermediaries in trade should not be underestimated. Their locations, scattered across the Aegean Sea, made them natural stopping points for voyages between mainland Greece, Crete, and Anatolia. The islands also possessed their own valuable resources, such as obsidian from Melos and marble, which were traded widely. The distribution of Cycladic marble figurines across the Aegean and beyond suggests a vibrant trade in artistic goods. The influence of Egypt on the Bronze Age maritime world was also significant. Egyptian civilization, with its advanced agricultural system, monumental architecture, and rich artistic traditions, exerted a considerable cultural and economic pull on its neighbors. Egyptian goods, such as finely crafted pottery, faience jewelry, and papyrus, have been found in archaeological sites throughout the eastern Mediterranean. Conversely, Egyptian records, such as tomb paintings and hieroglyphic inscriptions, occasionally depict foreign visitors and their vessels, providing a rare glimpse into these interactions. The Amarna letters, a collection of diplomatic correspondence from the 14th century BCE, even mention interactions and requests for goods between Egypt and its contemporaries, indirectly attesting to the flow of trade. The impact of these maritime networks on the development of human civilization is profound and enduring. They fostered economic growth, technological innovation, and cultural exchange. The movement of goods and ideas across vast distances contributed to the rise of complex societies and the formation of early empires. The knowledge gained from these voyages, both of the sea itself and of the distant lands and peoples encountered, broadened the horizons of the Bronze Age world, laying the groundwork for future explorations and discoveries. The legacy of these ancient mariners is still felt today. The routes they pioneered, the navigational techniques they developed, and the very concept of a connected world, facilitated by seafaring, are all part of our shared human heritage. While the ships themselves have long since turned to dust, and the echoes of their voyages have faded, the impact of their journeys continues to resonate. The Bronze Age sea routes, though perhaps once secret to those outside the mariner's world, reveal a vibrant and dynamic past, a testament to the ingenuity and adventurous spirit of ancient peoples. The careful selection of timbers, the intricate joinery of planks, the caulking with pitch to ensure seaworthiness, the meticulous balancing of cargo to prevent capsizing, all speak to a profound understanding of the forces at play. These were not rudimentary vessels, they were instruments of commerce and exploration, crafted with a deep respect for the sea and its caprices. The standardization of certain types of amphorae, for instance, used for the transport of wine and olive oil, suggests a degree of commercial organization where standardized containers facilitated trade and simplified accounting. The social structures that supported these expeditions were also intricate. The crews themselves would have been drawn from diverse backgrounds, skilled sailors, craftsmen, and perhaps even soldiers, to protect the cargo. The merchants who financed these voyages would have operated within established networks, building relationships of trust and credit with partners in distant lands. The existence of palaces and administrative centers that could organize the procurement and distribution of goods for export and the reception of imported commodities points to a sophisticated economic infrastructure. Consider the journey of copper. Mines in Cyprus, or indeed in other regions like the Balkans, would extract the raw metal. This would be smelted and cast into ingots, often of a standardized size and shape, making them easily transportable and recognizable. These ingots would then be loaded onto ships. The ship might sail to a port in Anatolia, where some of the copper would be traded for other goods, or it might continue on to Crete. In Crete, or on mainland Greece, the copper would be mixed with tin, likely sourced from further afield, to create bronze. This bronze could then be used to manufacture weapons, tools, and decorative objects, which themselves might then enter the trade network, destined for even more distant markets. This multi-stage process, with goods changing hands multiple times and traversing different environments, illustrates the profound interconnectedness of the Bronze Age world. The concept of lost knowledge also plays a role in our understanding of these routes. Much of the detailed, practical knowledge of navigation, of weather patterns, of safe anchorages, would have been tacit and passed down orally or through apprenticeships. When the great Bronze Age civilizations eventually declined, much of this specific, practical knowledge may have been lost or fragmented, making it seem more mysterious to later generations. The development of island chains as stepping stones for longer voyages was also a critical element. The Cyclades, for instance, provided a series of relatively short hops across the Aegean, allowing mariners to progressively extend their reach. From the southern Cyclades, it was a manageable journey to Crete. From Crete, one could then venture further west or east. Similarly, Cyprus acted as a crucial bridge between Anatolia, the Levant, and Egypt. These islands were not just places of refuge, but active participants in the maritime economy, producing their own goods and serving as vital links in the chain. The impact of these voyages on the distribution of resources was immense. Bronze, the defining metal of the age, could not have become so widespread without the extensive trade networks that moved copper and tin. This availability of bronze had a transformative effect on society, enabling the production of more durable tools, more effective weapons, and more elaborate decorative items. It fueled agricultural development, military expansion, and artistic expression. The narrative of these sea routes is one of slow, incremental progress, of accumulated knowledge, and of the persistent human desire to explore and connect. It is a story that unfolds not in dramatic battles or grand pronouncements, but in the quiet rhythm of waves against a hull, the careful unfurling of a sail, and the shared understanding between mariners of different tongues. The details are often found not in written chronicles, but in the silent testimony of archaeological finds. The scattered pottery shards, the scattered ingots of metal, the shipwrecks lying patiently on the seabed, waiting to reveal their stories. The sheer resilience of these maritime networks is also noteworthy. Despite the inherent dangers of seafaring, storms, shipwrecks, the ever-present threat of piracy, these routes persisted and, in many cases, expanded. This speaks to the profound economic and social benefits they provided, benefits that outweighed the risks for those who mastered the art of the sea. The demand for goods, the opportunities for wealth, and the desire for exotic commodities all served as powerful motivators, driving these ancient mariners ever onward. The careful planning that must have gone into provisioning these voyages is also a fascinating aspect. Long journeys would have required substantial amounts of food and fresh water. Dried grains, preserved meats, and cured fish would have been staples. The ability to procure and store these provisions effectively would have been critical for the success of any expedition. The management of such logistics speaks to a level of organizational skill that is often overlooked when considering ancient seafaring. The role of specialized craftsmanship in supporting these maritime endeavors cannot be overstated. Shipwrights, rope makers, sail makers, coopers for barrels, and even those who prepared pitch for waterproofing all played essential roles. The development of these specialized trades, often concentrated in coastal communities, would have been a direct consequence of the burgeoning maritime economy. The Bronze Age maritime networks were not just about the movement of goods, they were also about the movement of people. Sailors, merchants, artisans, and even diplomats would have traveled these routes, carrying with them their skills, their knowledge, and their cultural traditions. This intermingling of peoples contributed to the rich tapestry of Bronze Age societies and fostered a sense of a shared, albeit often competitive, world. The study of these ancient sea routes is an ongoing endeavor. New discoveries are constantly being made, and our understanding of the complexities of Bronze Age maritime trade continues to evolve. Each shipwreck unearthed, each new artifact analyzed, adds another piece to the puzzle, revealing more about the ingenuity, the ambition, and the interconnectedness of these ancient civilizations. The secret sea routes of the Bronze Age were, in truth, the very arteries of civilization, pulsing with the lifeblood of trade, exploration, and human connection. They were the foundation upon which much of the ancient world was built, and their influence can still be felt, whispering through the currents of history. The meticulous detail embedded in the construction of their vessels, the careful observation of celestial bodies, the precise weighing and assaying of metals, all these elements speak to a profound engagement with the material world and a deep understanding of the forces that shaped it. The ebb and flow of these trade currents, the rise and fall of particular port cities, the shifting dominance of one maritime power over another, all contribute to a dynamic and continuously unfolding historical narrative. The sheer persistence of these routes, weathering storms, and the vagaries of political fortune speaks to their fundamental importance in the lives of these ancient peoples. They were not merely conduits for luxury goods, but essential pathways for the exchange of vital resources, technologies, and ideas that fueled the engine of Bronze Age civilization. The faint traces they have left behind, in the form of scattered artifacts and submerged shipwrecks, continue to beckon us, inviting us to delve deeper into their intricate and fascinating story.